afternoon, everyone. I am Wilva Esmanayan, and today we are going to discuss the topic understanding the audience. We all know that knowing our audience help us figure out what content and messages people care about. Knowing our audience help us to get an idea of what to say, also tells us the appropriate tone and voice for our message and purpose of it. Our audience is the person or people we want to communicate with. By knowing more about them, like their wants, needs, values, and etc., we are able to better craft our message so that they will receive it the way they intended. That's why it is important to ask yourself as a speakers some questions like what made them attend the event or watch the movie. Did they come because they found something interesting, or they come because they want to be entertained? Audience analysis involves identifying the audience and adapting a speech to their interests, level of understanding, attitudes, and beliefs. Taking an audience-centered approach is important because a speaker's effectiveness will be improved if the presentation is created and delivered in an appropriate manner. So today, my group mates will going to discuss some methods for audience analysis before delivering a speech.
So for us to become an effective speaker, we also need to consider some ways to analyze our audience before we deliver our speech. So the first one is ethnicity. What is the group's common heritage and cultural traditions? Since all of us people have different cultures, have different value system and behavior patterns, it is important to consider the ethnicity of our audience and ask yourself as a speaker, because cultural sensitivity and inclusivity should be part of our audience analysis for us to not become judgment in our speech, which will create negative impact to our audiences. Second is race. What is their common ancestry? What are their common physical characteristics? In race identity with a group of people descended from a common ancestor, genetically significant differences among people. Third is religion. What are the religious beliefs of your audience? What are the traditions of these beliefs? Individuals who practice a religion have belief system and worldviews that relate humanity to spirituality and moral values. So according to some estimates, there are roughly 4,200 religions in the world. So the members of your audience could be followers of any of those religions. And lastly, sex and gender. Is there a majority of men in your audience, or do women form the majority? Is the majority of audience masculine, feminine, or androgynous women in the audience than men? Because women can do more than men, so there are many women in the audience.
You should consider the demographics of your audience before delivering a speech, so you can adapt analogies, vocabulary, quotes from authorities, and dialects to the audience. When preparing a speech, it is important to consider the general age of an audience because it is one way to help you determine the audience's interests, know the type of language to use, and identify your audience's beliefs or values, and choose the kind of support material you need. Before delivering a speech, you need to analyze the audience age. Are your audience children, teenagers, young adults, or middle-aged? And also, in a group affiliation, you need to know what are the common interests of your audience. Do they all belong to a specific group? In addition, before delivering your speech, you also need to analyze the occupation or socioeconomic status. You need to know if your audience belong to a particular occupational group. And lastly, regions. You also need to analyze from what region is your audience.
Situational information. Situational information has two main factors, the environmental factor and the temporal factor. But today, I am going to report about environmental factor. The environmental factor, you have to consider the nature of event, location, size of audience, physical arrangement, and technology. First is the nature of event. What is the event all about? How many people come to hear my speech and why they are here? What event, concern, and needs motivated them to come? What is their interest level and what else might be competing for their attention? Next is the location. Where will be the event take place? Is it near? Is it far? Is it indoor or outdoor? In a convention? Or in a stadium? Or in a room? Next is the size of audience. How many people are expected to attend the event? In a typical class, your audience is likely to consist of 20 to 30 listeners. This audience size gives you a latitude to be relatively informal within the bounds of good judgment. It isn't too difficult to let audience member to feel as though you were speaking to him or her. However, you would not become so informal that you allow your carefully prepared speech to lapse into shallow entertainment. With larger audience, it is more difficult to reach out to each listener, and your speech will tend to be more formal, staying more strictly within its careful outline. You will have to work harder to prepare visual and audio material that reaches the people sitting at the back of the room, including positively using amplification. Then, we have physical arrangement. What is the physical design of the venue? What part of the room will be the stage be? Where would the technical people staying? What is the layout of the room? Where will be the audience sit? You will have to consider that. And lastly, we have the technology. What technology is available in the room? Do you need to bring your own equipment? Existence of the podium or a microphone, and availability of digital media for visual aids? Do you need a teleprompter or a projector? These are the environmental factors in the situational information that you need to consider. Next is the temporal factor.
Good day everyone, I'm Afran Joyce Montabon. So along situational information, we have two factors to consider before delivering a speech, and that is the environmental factors that already reported and the temporal factors that I will be going to report. So what are we consider under temporal factors are the time of day, speaking order, and the length of speech. So why we need to consider the time of day in order to deliver the speech effectively? So that we can address properly to the audience, such when will the event happen? Is it in the morning, or in the midday, or in the evening? So the audience will not confuse if the speaker will say good morning as the event is happen in the morning. And next is speaking order. Before delivering a speech, the audience should know and the speaker should know of how many speakers will there be and what is the order of the presentation of the speaker, so that the event will flow smoothly, and this will help the audience to relax as they listen because they know that it's organized and well prepared. And the last one is the length of speech. So why we need to consider the length of speech before delivering to the audience? As it is very important to have the right timing. This doesn't just mean stay within the time allotted, but it also means saying the right things at the right time and at the right speed.
If you consider the past mentioned sectors in understanding the audience, it wouldn't be easy for you to fully understand your audience if you didn't also consider the psychographics. So what is psychographics? When we say psychographics, it is a study based on psychological characteristics and traits such as values, desires, goals, interests, and lifestyle choices. Psychographic factors may include motivation, values, level of agreement or attitude, and beliefs. Each of these unique psychological factors greatly influence your audience behavior, and you then use these factors to segment your audience based on their psychographic makeup. So the first factor is motivation. In motivation, we have this question: is the attendance of your audience by choice or were they required? We have what we call situational analysis. Situational analysis considers the situation for which your audience is gathered and is primarily concerned with why your audience is assembled in the first place. As a speaker yourself, you need to consider their motive, like, are they willingly gathered to hear you speak, or have your audience members paid to hear you? So these factors are decisively important because they place a major responsibility upon you as a speaker, whichever is the case. So the intertone and agenda of your speech rest largely upon whether or not your audience even wants to hear from you. The second factor is values. So in values, we have this question: what are the cultural influences and life experience of your audience? What is important for your audience? So as a speaker, it is important to know the influence and what is important for your audience, since they'll be the one who will hear your message or speech. Take note that being judgmental in your speech creates a negative impact, and that different influences have different value systems and behavior patterns. The content of your speech should acknowledge the diversity of your audience. Third factor is level of agreement or attitude. In level of agreement or attitude, we have this question: will your audience oppose you, support you, or remain neutral? So when choosing a topic for your speech, it is crucial to consider the composition of your audience. You should think further to assess that your audience might be ambivalent about your topic, or they may be strongly opposed or strongly agree. With that, what you need to do is to offer a clear statement of your purpose for the audience to know what or how to react and for them to be enlightened. So, last factor will be the beliefs. So, in beliefs, we have this question as well: what does your audience accept as correct, true, and valid? Here is where we argue something is right or wrong, moral or immoral, or better or worse than another thing. One way to organize what your audience accepts as correct, true, and valid is to focus on defining a problem and a solution. So as we have different perspectives, it is really not easy to convince your audience, but somehow you can persuade them using the sets of basic points such as: you should state your claim clearly, you should understand your audience well, engage through emotions, use evidence to amplify your point, and don't forget to keep organized. With that, it will help the audience to be clear of their thoughts and about what you want to convey. That's for me. Thank you and God bless.